let's go ahead and talk about Bellator 221. A lot of times, guys, we can preview a Bellator show with one comment each over the course of about 2 minutes. It's a little bit different this time.
Finally.
The prelims there's nothing you really got to catch there. But the main card looks pretty good. Taiwan Claxton, a guy who they've built up, taking on James Bennett. You have Jake Hager, the former Jack Swagger, taking on TJ Jones. Now, obviously, Jack Swagger is going to gain the attention of wrestling fans on our site. Taiwan Claxton, a big prospect. I like how they do this. They've got a couple prospects, one of which has a big name already, James, and that's how they kick off this show on DAZN. What do you think of these two? And I think it's pretty obvious. Both of these are big favorites, and both of these are expected to win, and Bellator wants both of them to win.
Yeah, this is the same formula they did a few weeks ago with Gaston Bolanos when he fought. Again, they're just trying to showcase, like an up-and-coming prospect right off on the main card, which I think is good. This is, you look at the records here, 4-1 against 4-0. I think this is a fight they're banking on Claxton to win. Same thing with Jake Hager. People might take issue with him fighting a one-on-one guy, but that's the point. You have to build him up a little bit. You can't just throw him to the wolves and, have a situation where you have, an up-and-comer sort of losing fights. Again, interesting. Hager didn't do a lot of media for this fight. I have yet to see an actual interview that he's done. I actually tried to interview him, and I know that there's nothing against me. It's just I don't think he's doing a lot of interviews. We did talk to Josh Rafferty, his coach. If you see that here on Fightful, we got some insight on his training camp and everything. But fights that they should win. Both these guys should win. When betting odds do become available, I always say just avoid it. But it seems like Bellator wants to sort of set these guys up and push them ahead. And AJ McKee to a certain degree is still a prospect as well. Big fight here against Pat Curran. I know we'll talk about that, but name value wise, this actually looks like almost a better card than the UFC in terms of some of their prospects and some of the people they're showing. I know I'm a little crazy for saying that, but I like some of the names on here, and a lot of these fights are pretty interesting.
Joe, your thoughts on these early fights, and as we step up, we get AJ McKee versus Pat Curran. That's a good one. AJ McKee's probably winning this, but
yeah, Pat Curran's, he's been fighting for so long that eventually that MMA mileage does catch up to you. I am going to look over, or I'm going to lean to AJ McKee in this one here. But I'm happy to see where Hager's going to end up here, right? I mean, people can say what they want about his opponent. Listen, like James said, you can't just sit there and put this guy against your top heavyweights. You have to build him correctly. You have to look at his own experience and say, okay, where is he at right now? And if he starts pulling off these crazy first round finishes the way sometimes prospects do, yeah, move him up. But right now I'm going to be paying attention to Jake Hager and see how he does.
We also have two rather big fights. Welterweight Grand Prix semifinal. Douglas Lima versus MVP. Joe, can he get it done? He being MVP.
No. I mean, you're asking me to pick against I did pick against Diego Lima 2 weeks ago, so I should watch my mouth. But Douglas Lima is my boy. I like Douglas Lima. I think he's just underrated. Still think he should have got that win versus Rory McDonald, but he's en route to winning this tournament, in my opinion.
James, your thoughts?
I love this fight. I don't love this fight for Michael Page. I think the last fight against Daly, even though he won that fight, I think it really showed that he's not on that level yet. And Lima, I mean, this is a guy who nearly beat Rory McDonald. And I know say what you want about Rory lately, but Lima is still, he's a UFC caliber welterweight. I don't think Michael Page is. I could be wrong here. I mean, if this stays standing, you never know. Page could do something different. But I think we've had sort of the two tests for Michael Page to see where he's at. Paul Daly and Fernando Gonzalez to a certain degree, and those were not great fights, both of them. Douglas Lima is never in a bad fight, and I think this last loss, if I'm not mistaken, other than Rory, was Koreshkov when he just basically wasn't 100%. So I think we're going to see a really good Douglas Lima here, but I expect him to win. I'd be really surprised if MVP pulls this off, just based off both of their last fights. I think Lima has really evolved and is one of the top welterweights that they have on the roster.
What do you think MVP could do to win? Does he have to be aggressive? Because as we've seen, when he's not, it can lead to a painfully boring fight and one that maybe doesn't suit him so well, James.
Yeah, I think it's maybe getting to the punch first. I know Lima was actually training in Thailand for this fight, so it really looks like he shored up his striking even more. You wonder if Page, I mean, it's tough to say, right? Like, it's not like Page can take him down and try and out wrestle him. I mean, that was, something that Rory was able to do and Koreshkov when they first fought on the first Koreshkov fight. But that's not going to happen here. So I think the reality is that Page is just basically got to try and be the better striker, and that's going to be very tough against Douglas Lima, who in his own right is a very accomplished striker.
Joe, what do you think is MVP's best opportunity to walk away with the win? And if you're Bellator, who do you want to win this fight?
Oh, it's a very good question. The latter question is very good. Let me put some thought into that while I express my opinion of Michael Page having to beat Douglas Lima to the punch, use his speed, and don't let Douglas Lima even set up. You know, take a page from Macy Chiason's book Sarah Morasso's book, and right when the gloves touch, do your thing. Don't even waste time. Don't even try and gain your distance. Don't try and figure out time. You just go in there and punish Douglas Lima and make him work on the defensive and try and get away from you and just keep punishing him, because if Lima sets and Lima gets ready, you'll start chopping away, right? So Michael Page has to just be fast, be quick, use his speed, and try and knock out or TKO Douglas Lima. As to who do I think Bellator would want to win, who moves the needle more, right? Which one of these guys moves the needle? And I would lean towards Venom Page, right? Because not many people are talking about Douglas Lima despite his experience, but in terms of the better fighter, I think it's Douglas Lima. But who moves the needle, guys? You tell me. I think Michael Page moves it more.
I do too. I really do. Main event, Michael Chandler headlining against the Pitbull brother, Joe.
Here we go. Here we go. Sean's going to go off.
You know it's Bellator when you got a Pitbull brother in there. Bellator just loves the Pitbull brothers. And the only thing they love more than the Pitbull brothers is when you get to fight one multiple times. And that's like what Chandler's career is. It's rematches and Pitbull brothers. This one against Patricio. How do you see this one going, Joe? Chandler has been on a real roll because, quite honestly, it was 4 or 5 years ago, it looked like Chandler was done at the top levels of Bellator. His kryptonite was Will Brooks.
Yeah. But
he's come back and he's had this amazing run. You could argue that he's not really been beaten because he had that Brent Primus injury. How do you see this one going?
I just think I think Chandler's going to overwhelm him. I think Michael Chandler, when he decides that the fight needs to be over, it's generally over. And, despite Patricio, the Pitbull brothers have heart. Let's not kid ourselves. They're not just going to go away. I just think Chandler's going to eventually pick him apart and then overwhelm him. And I think he'll get the finish in the 3rd or 4th round.
James, your thoughts?
Feel pretty much the same way. In most cases, I usually like going with the fighter who's fought in that weight class longer. I mean, no one's really talking about it, but this is the equivalent of basically Bellator's version of Dustin Poirier and Max Holloway to a certain degree. Although I guess that Poirier wasn't a champion there, but still, it's very interesting to see their featherweight champion move up here. I would have to favor Chandler, but I mean, Pitbull, he's always in every fight. Like it's even like the Emmanuel Sanchez fight, which was an extremely tough matchup. I mean, he ekes out that one. He always finds a way to get it done. I'd be curious to see how he adjusts. And what's interesting too is that Patricio has actually been training in the U.S. For the majority of this camp. He's been training with Henry Cejudo. They've had a long sort of friendship and all that, and they've been training together. And what's interesting is Chandler's actually trained a bit with TJ Dillashaw. So there's obviously so a bit of a rivalry there between Cejudo and Dillashaw. So we'll see if it's paid off. And again, with Cejudo, you're getting that superior wrestling obviously in this camp. So we'll see if that ends up paying off for him in this fight. But I like the fact that he's been stateside for this matchup. I think that's going to help him in this fight.
The betting odds on this, we have, I think, 2 fights where it actually has betting odds set up. Michael Chandler, a -230 favorite over Patricio, who is a +190. Douglas Lima, a -240, while Michael Page is a +200. How do those sit for you, James? Do you agree with him?
Yeah, I think the lines are right where they need to be. I think like with Lima being a bit more of a favorite than Chandler is over Freite, I think that makes sense. Just again, Page's last performance not a great one. And with Chandler, he's the champ. He's hardly lost at all. They haven't signed Will Brooks, so he should be steering the clear there. But I think I think the lines are right where they need to be for sure.
How about you, Joe?
I think there's value in the underdogs. I'm not gonna lie to you. I would not make either one of these favorites in the -230s to -240. I would make them -190s, -180s. So I think you've got value on Freite as well as Page. Although I do believe Chandler and Lima are going to win. I just think the odds are a little bit higher than I thought.